Once upon a time, in a quiet village nestled between emerald hills and silver streams, lived a man named Elias. He was an ordinary man by most standards. He woke with the sunrise, worked hard in the fields, and shared his meals with neighbors. But deep inside, Elias felt a longing, a quiet ache in his chest that whispered, "There's something more to life than this." He wasn't unhappy, but he wasn't truly living either. Days melted into weeks, and weeks into years. He did what he was supposed to, but not what he was called to do. One evening, as the orange sun dipped behind the hills and painted the sky in firelight, Elias sat by the river and spoke aloud to no one. "What is the secret to a better life?" To his surprise, an old traveler passing by overheard him. The man wore a long, dusty coat and had eyes that sparkled like he'd seen both heaven and hell. He smiled gently and said, "You asked the right question. The answer is simple, but the path is not. You must go on a journey, not out there," he pointed to the horizon, "but in here." The traveler placed a hand on Elias' chest. "Follow these 4 lights," the traveler whispered, "and you'll build a better life, brick by brick." And then, as quickly as he had appeared, the old man vanished down the path. Light 1. Clarity. The next morning, Elias rose before the sun. He sat by the river with only a notebook and silence. He began to ask himself the hard questions. What do I truly want? What am I afraid of? If I could live any life, what would it look like? It wasn't easy. His mind resisted. But he kept writing. And over time, his vague longing turned into a clearer vision. He wanted a life of purpose. He wanted to create, to heal, to inspire. And so, Elias made a promise, no more living on autopilot. From that day on, every action would take him closer to the life he imagined. Light 2. Courage. Clarity without action is a dream. So Elias began small. He took long walks and spoke to strangers. He learned to say no to things that drained him. He finally left the job that paid the bills but dimmed his soul. People thought he was foolish, leaving stability behind. But Elias remembered the traveler's words. Each step into the unknown was terrifying, but it was also alive. He began writing stories, volunteering, speaking in town gatherings. Every act of courage opened a door he never knew existed. And for the first time, Elias felt that quiet ache in his chest begin to ease. Light 3. Discipline. Elias quickly learned that passion fades and excitement wavers. Some mornings he didn't want to write. Some days he wanted to give up. But he created rituals. He woke with the sun, meditated by the river, wrote for 2 hours before breakfast, and ended each day reflecting on his choices. He didn't always feel like showing up, but he did anyway. Discipline, he realized, was the bridge between vision and reality. And soon, the life he had once only written about in his notebook was becoming the life he lived. Light 4. Compassion. Elias became known in the village not as the man who gave up everything, but as the man who lifted others. He listened deeply. He offered wisdom without judgment. He mentored the lost and gave food to the hungry, not out of obligation, but from overflowing love. Because a better life, Elias had learned, was not just about rising alone, it was about rising and reaching back. The better his life became, the more he gave. And the more he gave, the better his life became. Years later, Elias grew old, his beard silver and his hands worn. But he glowed with peace. One day, a young man sat beside him by the river and asked, "How did you build a life like this?" Elias smiled gently and said, "Clarity gave me direction. Courage helped me start. Discipline kept me going. And compassion gave it all meaning." Then he handed the young man his old notebook, worn, full of scribbled dreams and life lessons. And just like that, a new journey began. The young man's name was Kalen, a wanderer from a distant town who had come searching, not for gold or glory, but for something real. He had heard whispers of a wise elder who lived by the river, a man who seemed to glow with calm in a world full of chaos. When he finally met Elias, something shifted inside him. and when Elias handed him the notebook, Kalen didn't realize he had just received the first key to his own transformation. That night, Kalen opened the pages under starlight. The paper was soft, almost worn through in places. There were quotes, sketches, questions, and 4 words repeated again and again. Clarity, courage, discipline, compassion. Kalen stared at them, then whispered to the sky, "Show me who I can become." Kalen's life had been full of noise, voices telling him who to be, what to want, what to fear. For years, he'd run from job to job, town to town, relationship to relationship, hoping to escape the emptiness inside. But now, for the first time, he stopped running. He took Elias's advice and sat in silence. 1 hour each morning, he wrote without editing. What do I believe? Who am I when no one is watching? What kind of life would I be proud of at the end? At first, the answers came slow and uncertain. But then the fog began to clear. Kalen discovered he wanted to teach and heal, to help others untangle their pain the way he was learning to untangle his. Clarity wasn't a lightning bolt. It was a slow candle that lit one small corner of his soul at a time. With new vision came fear. To live a new life, he would have to let the old one die. Kalen left behind the job he despised, even though it paid well. He said goodbye to people who only loved the version of him that played small. He signed up to apprentice under a traveling healer, even though he had no experience and only his heart to offer. He was scared every day. But every time he acted despite the fear shrank a little more. One night, under the stars, Kalen whispered, "I am becoming someone new." And it was true. The days of excitement faded. Some mornings were hard. Some lessons were tedious. The old doubts crept back in. But Kalen remembered Elias's notebook. He made a schedule. Wake with the sun. Read for 1 hour. Train and serve. Write one truth every night. He didn't chase perfection. He chased progress. With each passing week, he felt stronger, calmer, more whole. People began to notice. "You've changed," they said. "You seem grounded." Kalen smiled. He was laying bricks of a better life, one steady choice at a time. One cold morning, Kalen found a boy crying beside the road. The child had lost his parents and didn't know where to go. Without hesitation, Kalen knelt beside him. He didn't offer quick answers. He offered presence. He told the boy a story, Elias's story. He gave him food and warmth. He told him he was not alone. The boy smiled, tears drying on his cheeks. In that moment, Kalen realized the truth. The goal of building a better life isn't just to rise. It's to become someone others can rise with. Years passed. Kalen grew into a teacher, a healer, a guide. He wore no fancy titles, but people traveled far to sit with him by the river. One day, a girl named Leora came. Her eyes were restless, full of questions. She asked, "How did you build this kind of life?" Kalen smiled and pulled out a worn old notebook, now filled with his scribbles, sketches, and wisdom. He handed it to her and said, "Clarity gave me vision. Courage helped me begin. Discipline kept me true. Compassion gave it purpose." The same 4 lights. The same truth. A new beginning. And so, the guide to a better life passed on. Again, Leora was only 17 when she found Kalen. She came barefoot, with a bag full of poems and pain, following the rumors of a man by the river who helped people find their path. Kalen didn't speak much when she arrived. He just handed her a notebook, the same one once passed to him, and let her sit in silence beneath the trees. At first, Leora wasn't sure what she was searching for. But something about the air, the quiet, the weight of the notebook in her lap, told her this place would change her. And it did. Leora had spent most of her life trying to be what others needed. A good daughter, a quiet student, a polite girl who didn't make waves. But under the trees by the river, no one told her who to be. So, for the first time, she listened to her own voice. She opened the notebook and wrote in trembling words. I don't know who I am, but I want to find out. I don't want to live safe. I want to live true. I want to paint, to travel, to love boldly, to leave a mark. I want to become someone I would look up to. Tears ran down her cheeks, but they were not tears of sadness. They were the first drops of freedom. Leora left home not in rebellion, but in renewal. She set off with a small pack and the fire of purpose in her chest. She traveled town to town, offering help where she could, watching children, drawing portraits, writing poems on street corners in exchange for warm meals. She stumbled often. She got sick, ran out of money, and doubted herself many times. But each time she wanted to quit, she returned to the four lights. Clarity reminded her why she began. Courage told her to keep going. Discipline gave her structure. Compassion kept her heart open. And slowly, the world began to shift around her, because she was shifting within. Leora learned that art without structure remained a dream, so she made a vow. Paint every morning, no matter what. Write a poem before bed. Journal her thoughts with raw honesty. She sent postcards to people she met, offering encouragement. She studied the work of great creators, and learned from failure. There were no overnight victories, just small, sacred wins. Over time, people began to notice her light. Her paintings were displayed in cafes. Her words began to spread across towns. A small following grew, people drawn not just to her art, but to her spirit. Not because she was perfect, but because she was becoming. One winter night, Leora met a woman named Anya, homeless, cold, and grieving the loss of her son. Leora didn't just offer food. She stayed. She held Anya's hand, sang to her softly, and asked her to tell the story of her son. They cried together. They laughed, too. Leora painted a small portrait of the boy from Anya's memories and gave it to her in a handmade frame. Weeks later, Anya found a shelter. She began cooking again, feeding others who were lost. Leora realized, healing yourself helps others heal. Living better doesn't just change your life. It changes the world around you. Epilogue, the spark that lit the forest. Years passed. Leora returned to the river where it all began. Kalen was gone now, passed on peacefully, his mission complete. She sat beneath the same tree. A girl approached, barefoot, curious, a little lost. The cycle was beginning again. Leora smiled and handed her a new notebook, hand-bound in crimson thread, with gold lettering on the first page that read, Guide to a Better Life. By Elias, Kalen, Leora. And now, you. Inside were these words,